Howdy, and welcome to the Lost Rider podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to address you in the capacity of an interviewer, reporter, and media member. Too many modern media outlets have forgone the integrity and responsibility required of credible information sources. What you will receive here are straightforward discussions with legislators, agency leaders, biologists, engineers, doctors, and countless other experts that have the answers to questions often circulated as kitchen table issues. The title Lost Rider may be thought of literally as well as in the metaphorical sense. While there has been the instance that I was momentarily a little turned around at night in a wilderness area, the idea of being a lost rider in life, well, that fits most folks at some time. These renderings are coming to you in the form of the 25-year-old radio program, The News from the Camp House. It still airs every Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time on KULM 98.3 FM out of Columbus, Texas. The original intent was to relate outdoor topics to the general public. Immediately, it was found that all issues are relatable to the outdoors and that people are people. They all play a role and they all have a vested interest. It's this program's desire to answer common questions about how the world works, how it will operate in the future, and what's the holdup? So please listen, enjoy, and never hesitate to contact us with more questions and feedback. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House, listening post of the Texas Sportsman Association. This is Herman Brune, and this week's edition is also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, the country club for folks who don't have a country club. All right, now we have a special guest with us this weekend. This is our state veterinarian, and he is also the executive director of the Texas Animal Health Commission, Dr. Dinges. How are you doing, Doc?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Man, it's like I always say, I was trying to make everybody happy, but it's just, how that goes.
You bet.
It's never ending, and it's job security. So, anyway, we're here today to get an update on screwworms, what's going on with the screwworm situation, and, in the horrible event that, they ever get across the Rio Grande, what are people supposed to do? So that's I'm going to let you elaborate. Where are we at today?
You bet. So, as of right now, USDA is reporting 13,234 total cases, animal cases in Mexico. They're considered 492 cases, what they consider active in animals. And then I think presently there are like 110 human cases in Mexico being reported as of January the 9th. So we've kind of been watching the screwworms kind of migrate north from Panama there in the Darien Gap since we've been kind of keeping an eye on it. Well, we have been keeping an eye on it since March of 2024, and they moved their way up through Central America there. Made it to Guatemala by Halloween of 2024, and then week before Thanksgiving, they were reported in Mexico there in the southern state. So it's something we've been keeping an eye on for quite some time. They were eradicated from the U.S. in 1966. They were pushed back down into Mexico. We did have outbreaks in Texas in 72. I think we had almost 91,000 cases here in Texas.
Really?
Being reported and affected all but about 10 southeast states in the state at that time. So
I'll be damned.
And they really weren't doing much as far as animal control goes back then. At that time, we had a production facility that produced 200 million sterile flies at our southern border there at the Moore Air Base down there at Mission, and so they were relying heavily on the sterile insect technique and the use of those sterile flies to eradicate the New World screwworm fly. So,
Right.
Like I said, back then they weren't paying much, or they weren't doing a whole lot to control animal movement. They would send, the Animal Health Commission would send inspectors out, inspect the animals, verify that those were New World screwworms, and they would basically put a 30-foot by 30-foot X on the ground with chalk or lime, if you will, and that way, when the plane would fly over, they could drop the New World screwworm sterile flies on that premises. Yes, sir. So,
all right. But now, I mean, yeah, but at the same, I mean, we have always, when it came to having beef or anything like that, horses or anything moving between Texas and Mexico, there's always been a quarantine period.
You bet. There are regulations and rules that have to be followed for, animals coming out of Mexico. And then, obviously animals going into Mexico have to have, certain regulatory diseases tested and so on and so forth. So, our borders have been shut down for import of Mexican cattle since November of 24. They opened them back up in February. They remained open up until about the first part of May of 2025, and then they shut them back down just due to some northern discoveries of cases in Mexico. And then they remained closed since then. They tried to open them back up for a day in July, and they found some more northernmost cases. And the northernmost case right now that we've had a couple of 3 cases in Nuevo Leon, which were about 70 miles from the southern border there. We do have cases that are creeping up into Tamaulipas. I think they report 8 cases as of last week there in Tamaulipas. What's of concern there is that a few of those cases are in basically week-old animals, which would kind of lead to potentially the development of a adult fly population in that area. We don't have confirmation of that yet. USDA is still looking into the movement of those animals and kind of doing the epi investigation on those cases there in southern Tamaulipas.
All right, so they're showing up in baby calves in Tamaulipas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, yeah, and the quarantine is all fine and good, but that don't stop flies. And yeah, so 70 miles.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so those cases that were 70 miles south of the U.S. border were tied to animals that had been moved from southern states. So those were based on movement. USDA has done trapping of flies in and around that area for 3 life cycles, almost 90 days.
Okay.
And there haven't been any adult fly populations or adult flies trapped in those surveillance traps. So they feel pretty confident that there's not a sterile or not a adult fly population of New World screwworm flies in those states there in Nuevo Leon.
All right. Is there anything, any kind of regulations, any kind of restrictions, any kind of stop guards going on down there?
So you bet. And in Mexico, the USDA has been really involved with this. Our new administration that took over in January of last year. Secretary Rollin has been instrumental in trying to kind of get the Mexican government to toe the mark and walk the line there, if you will. They did, put in place a New World Screwworm Action Agreement back in August of this year. USDA sends teams down into Mexico looking at animal movements, their surveillance, their treatment protocols, and so on and so forth. So the USDA's been pretty actively involved in that in the last 8 to 12 months. These flies have not, the natural movement of the flies wouldn't have probably allowed them to move up from Panama as quick as they did. Probably the movement of the fly was due to infested animals that moved up through Central America. The fly is not going to, normally it's not, a given day it's not going to travel more than 6 to 12 miles. If there are, obviously susceptible hosts in the area, they're not going to travel over about 2 miles in a day. So, but the movement from Central America has definitely been on infested animals. And
I got a dumb question. If these things came up from Central America or Panama down, below Guatemala and all that, how in the hell do those people live with these things?
Well, there are quite a few. So we have a production facility there in Panama that produces the sterile flies, and the cases are really multiplying in those Central American countries right now because there aren't being any sterile flies dropped in those areas. So it's kind of like a dam. The USDA has moved the dispersal polygon of those flies further north into Mexico. So the water's building up, so to speak, further south. So the problem is we don't have enough sterile flies, or we don't have the sterile fly production to eradicate them and push them back down south into Panama. Back in the 70s and into the 80s, we had a production facilities, like I mentioned before, that produced 200 million sterile flies a week here in South Texas. Back in the 90s or the 80s, I guess, in 70s, that they had a production facility of 500 million sterile flies a week in Mexico that the U.S. was instrumental in helping to get built and open up. But there is a sterile fly production facility. There's a sterile fruit fly production facility in Mexico that the USDA helped with like $21 million to the Mexican government to help convert that into a sterile new world screwworm fly production facility. That plant should come online in July of this year, June or July of this year, and it may be a couple of months to establish a fly brood, but they're hoping to eventually produce 100 million sterile flies from that plant in Mexico. So that will be 200 million sterile flies that we have at our disposal to disperse and hopefully stop the northern progression of these wild type flies.
Okay. All right, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and thank folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back. Thank goodness for all the great sponsors we have here at News from the Camp House. H-E-B Food Stores. That's Stephen Tice at H-E-B. He helps me. He helps the community. He's a great man. I'm so thankful H-E-B loosened him up, lets him go around and sponsor a few things. H-E-B's got all your food needs. It's the greatest food store we got here in Columbus. Thank goodness for H-E-B. First State Bank. You go over to the First State Bank, they'll take care of all your loans, all your deposits, your savings, anything you need. Bunch of great hometown people over there. You got Celia Tobias, John Pollock. Everybody over there is looking out for you. Miss Barbara Barta. It's a great bunch of folks at the First State Bank is also sponsoring News from the Camp House. First State Bank takes care of all my business. Baumgart Agency, Susan Baumgart at the Baumgart Agencies, her and Germania. She told me to plug Germania. Germania is an insurance that she likes to everybody to know about. The Baumgart Agencies. Miss Susan and I are classmates, being classmates. She got me out of high school, sat right beside her, put us in alphabetical order where I could copy. And Susan Baumgart over at the Baumgart Agency, taking care of all your insurance needs. Lyco Realty, one of the original sponsors of News from the Camp House. Lyco Realty, the oldest real estate company in the county, and for the last 3 years voted the favorite realtor in the county. Lyco Realty, that's Miss Kimberly Johnson, that's Crockett's granddaughter. More kinfolks and classmates and great people from Colorado County. People from Colorado County helping people from Colorado County, that's great. Oh, thank goodness for all these wonderful people come to me want to be sponsors for News from the Camp House. Good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's News from the Camp House. This is Herman Brune, and we're here this weekend with Dr. Dinges. He is a Texas State veterinarian. He is the executive director of the Texas Animal Health Commission. Okay, TAHC. All right, he's executive director. So now he's cluing us in a little bit on what's going on with the screwworms. And, all right, so where we cut it off at in the first half was we were saying that by July, there will be a facility in Mexico producing these sterile flies. That's the way you fight. That's the way you fight screwworms, is with sterile flies. Am I correct? Is that what you said, that by July there will be a facility in Mexico ready to do this, correct?
They hope to have the USDA has the New World Screwworm Directorate they formed several months ago. They have staff and team members that are working with the Mexican government on a daily basis to get that facility transformed into a production facility for New World Screwworm sterile flies. Yes, sir. But it may take them up till December of this year to get up to 100 million sterile fly production capacity. So that's the big part. One good thing about this fly is it can be easily eradicated with the use of the sterile insect technique in these sterile flies that are produced. But we don't have enough of those flies to be released right now to get it stopped and moved back down into Central America. They're talking about 400 to 500 million sterile flies a week being needed to do that. So,
and the Central Americans, they don't have a facility.
Well, we do have a facility, and it's the only one in the world. It's the facility there at Panama.
That's correct. Facility. Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir. And they produce, 100 million sterile flies a week. And normally it takes them only about, if the flies are south of the Darien Gap there, usually it just takes them about 40,000 sterile flies a week to release to keep them in check. But there are several things that they thought that might have led to the issue of the fly moving north of the Darien Gap there into Panama to begin with. They thought that COVID may have played a part in it, with people not being able to show up for work. There could have been supply chain issues with supplying the parts there to the Copeg facility. There could have been they were worried about the libido of the mating ability of the sterile fly with the wild type fly. So they did change the strain of fly back in August of 2024. So they're producing a different strain of fly now.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at July, and then we're looking on to next December. But weather-wise, we got winter here. Are we counting on the weather at all to kind of knock this back?
Well, unfortunately, we've had a unseasonably warmer winter so far. These flies don't like an ambient temperature of about 65 degrees. Anything below that, their activity slows down. It would take a hard freeze in the ground to be frozen several days to kill the pupae, that are in the ground from these flies and their larvae.
Mm-hmm.
But one good thing that Secretary Rollins has done, they've worked on developing another sterile fly dispersal center there at the Moore Air Base here in Edinburgh.
Okay.
That facility is completed. They're going to start bringing up some pupae from Panama there to put in that facility and train some folks, and then if they need to be, they can inactivate that dispersal center and distribute sterile flies from there, which they would bring up the 100 million sterile flies or however many they would need
mm-hmm.
at that facility, the pupae, and let them mature and then disperse them from there.
When would that come online?
So they're shooting for 18 months from August of this last year. So they're looking at March of 2027 before that dispersal center would be, where they could, quote unquote, hand the keys over to where they could start to develop a fly brood. They're thinking initially they could produce 100 million sterile flies, and then they're going to continue to build that facility out to where eventually they'll get to 300 million sterile flies.
All right. Is there any plans? Say we get into April, May, June. It starts warming up around here in June, and all of a sudden we find them. What do you tell people to do?
You bet. So the New World screwworm is considered a foreign animal pest, and so we have to take the samples of those of the fly larvae and send those to the National Veterinary Services Lab in Ames, Iowa. They'll be identified. They'll be verified that they're New World screwworm larvae, and then basically we're going to have to rely on animal movement control initially, and then within 2 days we should have sterile flies from Copag there to release. But being that we don't have enough sterile flies that we need, the amount that we need, we're going to have to rely heavily on animal movement control to stop the movement of these infested animals, so to speak. So we'll establish infested zones, and then establish surveillance zones around those. These zones will be about 12 miles in radius. And then we're going to, and we've got the ability to quarantine, if you will, these areas. But I can assure that we're dedicated to the continuity of business the best we can. But we're going to try to, wrap our hands around this and get it stopped and get it stamped out as quick as we can. These animals can move out of these infested zones. They just need to be inspected, number one, treated, identified, and then have the documentation that they've had all that done to them, and then those animals can move out of those infested zones that we have.
Right. The wild card in that is wildlife.
You bet. I mean and that's one thing we have not had from Mexico is surveillance on wildlife. We've been asking for that since November of 2024. We've yet to really see how it's affected the wildlife population there in Mexico. So I know the USDA's wildlife services have been down to Mexico and tried to impress upon them the need for wildlife surveillance, and I think they've got some things in place to help improve that. But as far as the wildlife go, we're kind of left in the dark as to how it's affected that in Mexico. And I know, in the 50s and 60s, it wiped out pretty much 60 to 80% of the fawn crop here in South Texas in the white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
So the wildlife will play a really important part in that.
Right. All right. I'll tell you what, let me throw a curve in here right quick. I've got a completely different question on a different topic, and I'm just curious about it. A few months ago, I shot what I'm pretty sure was a rabid coon. And I couldn't find anybody that wanted to even know about it. I thought somewhere there was records kept on these type of things.
The Department of the State Health Services handles the rabies in Texas. You could get a hold of a game warden or a veterinarian, and then they could help with the submission of that animal to the Department of State Health Services. They have a lab here in Austin that tests animals for rabies.
Okay. All right, because I couldn't find. Well, I talked to quite a few officials, and I couldn't get anybody to even really were too interested in it.
Yes, sir.
They really didn't want to know about it. And it
was darn.
No, yeah.
I would contact the animal control officer and whatever county you live in, and they should be able to help you. They should be really interested in it. So
yeah,
yeah.
I tried several places, and nobody. They said, well, what'd you do with it? And I said, I didn't touch it. And they went, well, either go bury it, or go take care of it in the manner you're talking about, or something else. They said, but yeah.
You definitely want to make sure and wear some latex gloves, or protect yourself from getting anything into an open wound or mucous membrane.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Well, the scary part, it was on the highway, and there was a lady trying to feed it cookies or something,
goodness.
And I had to warn her away from it, and and it was a very nice, well-dressed lady with jewelry on, and driving a nice car, and saw an animal in distress and wanted to feed it. And I had to convince her that this was not anything she could remedy, and that I had the remedy, and she just needed to leave. And we finally got. She stood there and tried to feed it cookies till it started coming towards her, and then I think it looked so horrible that she got back in her car and left. And she said, well, how are you going to help it? I said, well, I'm just going to put it out of its misery.
Yes.
And she goes, oh, I don't want to see that. And so that was the end of that. But yeah, I couldn't find any county people that were interested in knowing about it. So that was the State Health Commission.
Yeah, well, the Department of State Health Services.
Okay.
But any animal control officer in the county should be able to help you with that deal there.
All right.
So.
Well, that was a curiosity to me. I also looked up, and I saw Kerr County has a lot of, they keep track of it better over around Kerrville. Apparently more incidences of it. But as I read all their regulations, I went, this is exactly why people don't report it. There were so many restrictions and regulations. I said, well, this is why it don't get reported sometimes.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how prevalent it is in raccoons. I know, skunks are more prevalent to be infected with rabies, I believe. But
okay. All right.
You bet.
Well, go ahead.
How are you related to a Kenneth Brune?
Oh, that's cousin. Yeah,
okay.
that's
kinfolk. My dad was friends with him. He used to, I guess, they did a radio report for Columbus Livestock for years, I guess.
Yes.
Did he not? Yeah. And then, I don't know, but they had some kind of big feed at a deer camp before deer season, I want to say. Did they not? You bet. Okay.
Big old feed, big old gambling party. So,
you bet.
So, all right, well, thanks.
No worries about all that. So you absolutely holler back if I can help you with anything.
I'll do it. Okay, hang on just a second, folks. I hope you enjoyed this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House. Hope you learned something. Hope you kind of know where we stand with screwworms, what's going on, what the state's trying to do, and what to do if you see something suspicious. So, all right. This weekend's edition was also brought to us by Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club folks who don't have a country club. Now, go out, have fun, be safe this weekend, and y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.